Pro Media professional live streaming service. Experience the difference when it's live. Pro Media provides you a complete range of live and demand streaming solutions no matter what your special event may be. Weddings, funerals, concerts, press conferences, conventions, seminars, workshops, meetings, religious events, and more. For more information, call 669-5376 or 609-5264. Experience the difference when it's live. Hello and welcome to this episode of Mixed Essence. I'm your host Leanna Allen, and today we are discussing healthy boundaries. What are healthy boundaries? Why are they important? What do they look like? And how do we begin to establish them in our various relationships? Today we are joined by two special guests, Michelle Charles and Cowen Gittens, for his inaugural episode. Guys, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having us.
All right, so healthy boundaries is not something you hear about in your everyday run-of-the-mill conversation. But in our interactions with people, whether we have them or we don't have them, often shows up in the things we say and how we behave. So let's just lay some foundation. When we talk about healthy boundaries, what are we talking about exactly?
Okay, so when we're talking about healthy boundaries, we're talking about people understanding where you end and where the other person begins.
Okay.
So we are taught about boundaries in our childhood. Our parents tell us, don't allow persons to touch you certain places, and that is a physical boundary. Right? There are also emotional boundaries. There are relationship boundaries.
Okay.
Boundaries fall into about 5 different categories. But basically, what we need to understand about healthy boundaries, that a healthy boundary for me can look different to a healthy boundary for you, based on personality. So we cannot present generally a list of healthy boundaries. There are some that are standard, but generally people establish boundaries based on what feels good for them.
Okay.
So it is not a one size fits all. So I think we need to understand that not because a boundary, this is particular issue is a boundary for you, to place that expectation on somebody else, that should automatically be a boundary for them.
Right.
Because boundaries are unique to people.
All right.
Yeah,
Cool.
I agree, and I want to research, but I think that it's easier to set boundaries than it is to, or easy to establish them than it is to re-establish them. Because if you let someone overstep, it becomes difficult for you to tell them, no, okay, this is my boundary. So I believe that in any relationship, whether it be an emotional relationship or just a friendship, right, or even a platonic relationship, you have your friends or whatever the case may be, you, at the initial part of that friendship, you have to set your boundaries, right? You have to let people know, listen, here's what you can do, or here's what I'm going, or here's how I'm going to respond if you do this, right? So then, when it comes to some, because if you set from the inception of the relationship, you don't have to now go in and telling them, hey, don't do this, or you wouldn't feel disgusted as well if you do something that affects you. And it goes along all different facets, even in marriages, because if I can give a scenario, it's easier to tell someone, don't come into my home, than if you tell someone to get out of my home.
Very true.
Right? Because then you got to study if you got to fight them for them to come home.
Yes,
Right.
Yes.
So if you set boundaries at the initial part of the relationship, it then becomes easier for you to relate to people, and people then would know exactly where you stand on certain things, and then you can have a better or a healthy relationship with them because they won't overstep, because they already know, listen, these are my boundaries, here's where we stand, this is what you can do, this is how I'm going to respond, and then you can move on from there.
Okay, all right. So let's double back a bit. So we have boundaries in all aspects of our lives. We erect fences around our houses to keep our neighbors out, in essence, right? And you need those boundaries to say, you know, this is where your space is, this is where mine is, and if you desire to come in, you need permission to do so. Similarly, so when we speak about emotional boundaries, it's almost like having specific fences around our emotions. If that's the direction, let's go in that direction for now, right? So having said all of this, what would having an unhealthy emotional boundary look like, say, for example, in a work setting? What are your thoughts? Because I've experienced this in different environments, and it shows up differently for different people, but I'm not sure yet people can yet grasp, okay, realistically, what are we talking about?
And I think this conversation about boundaries, or the topic boundaries, clearly defined as boundaries, is a concept that is now becoming a trendy word.
Okay.
But we've had boundaries all along. But the challenging thing is that sometimes we ourselves do not know that this is a boundary for us.
True.
So when we are not fully conscious that this is a boundary, or when you allow somebody to do something, you're actually having a very porous boundary where you should have a more firm or rigid boundary in this area.
Right.
Then we can't police that boundary.
Because we don't know it's there in the first place.
Because we don't know it's there. But what we tend to feel a sense of annoyance or some unsettling feeling. And when we feel that there's something at the core that is bothering us there. In terms of emotional boundaries at work, and probably in almost any setting, emotional boundaries are normally violated or pushed against when people want to tell you how you should feel and how you shouldn't feel in a particular situation.
Okay.
When they want to direct your emotions, or because you know this situation is not, it doesn't call for you to react like that, you know, because I am not reacting like that. Why should you react like this? Something's got to be wrong with you. But who are they to tell you how you should feel?
Right.
Your feelings are yours. You need to manage your feelings.
Right.
But they should not have the ability or the space or you know, to speak to how you should feel and shouldn't feel under particular circumstances.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it comes back to your initial point, because for some boundaries, they may not necessarily be something that you have to say to people. Because I think any reasonable or any rational person would know exactly what they should do to a person. Because if you're working with someone...
You'd be surprised.
That's what I'm saying. Any reasonable person. Because in the workplace, I find that people really don't know boundaries indeed.
No.
Right? And some people, they don't know that this is a boundary for them, as you said already. Right? Because if you're in the workplace, and I know there's this thing that people say, you work husband and you work wife. Right? Because at the workplace, you might have a work colleague that you would do certain things with, certain things that you should not be doing. Right? And you allow them to do these things to you. And what I'm saying from the first part that I was saying that if you allow people to overstep, they will overstep.
Yeah.
And then it becomes difficult for you to tell them, no, don't do this, or I don't like this, because you've already established a boundary, and you allow them to overstep that.
Or the lack of a boundary.
Right?
Yeah.
So now they are already comfortable crossing that line. So who are you now to tell them, listen, you can't cross this line?
Right.
They've already crossed the line. You can't. So now they now would feel offended by you establishing your boundaries.
Trying to do it after the fact.
Exactly. So you as an individual, you have to look out for yourself. And you have to let people know clear, because it's sometimes people don't say anything. Right? You just allow things to happen. But you gotta let people know explicitly that, listen, I don't want you to do this, or I don't feel comfortable doing this.
Right.
Those are boundaries you already set.
Right.
Going forward, now you can, if you realize that they are overstepping, you can tell them, listen, we're not going to be friends anymore, or whatever the case is, because you've already set those boundaries. And emotionally, when people are put in a position that they can say certain things to you and do certain things to you, they will continue to do it because you have not tell them, or you haven't said, don't say this to me, don't do this to me. So you haven't set any boundaries, or you don't even know that you should set boundaries, and you just allow them to do anything to you.
I mean, I've experienced in different work environments, because I've worked quite a few places before, and you would see there may be this one person who is all in the sense that they do everything from day to night that they're asked to do, go beyond the call of duty, and which in itself is not, there isn't anything wrong with that, but in that process, the person that they report to, or the person that has some supervisory capacity over them, treat them like trash and grind them into the dust, right? And they just feel this need to continually pour in and just give everything they have. And there is a line, there should be a line, I don't know, should be statements is a thing by itself, but there should be, I say this cautiously, there should be a line between me giving my best and this work-life balance that we talk about all the time, but in many instances we don't actually live it. You keep going and you keep going for the entity, but there should be a point where you say, okay, I need some time for me. I am still a person outside of this specific setting. But oftentimes those lines are violated because that person may not have established up front that I have other things going on in my life and I actually need some time for me. The funny thing is in doing that, it doesn't have to be harsh or rude. It's knowing how to have that dance of saying, yes, I'm here to do my part for the organization, but at the end of the day, we got a life, right?
That's important what you said, because even people in supervisory positions, right? They know which staff they can go.
Oh, yes.
Work, you know.
They
know which staff they can go to get people to work overtime, you know. And they wouldn't go to the ones who know, listen, now it's 5 or now it's 4:30. I'm leaving. Don't even call my phone. They know the ones. Because those persons would have already established, listen, this is after work hours, I'm not doing anything concerning right? If this building is on fire at 4 you're on your own.
I'm out of here.
Right? But for some persons, they don't know, or they don't know how to explain those things.
No.
Exactly. They don't know how to say no.
They don't know how to say no.
But I mean, human beings are complex.
I know.
It's not just complicated. About, okay, why do some people feel the need to set boundaries and some people don't?
Sometimes those things are based in deep things. I know.
Deep things like attachment. I mean, you know, if people feel that, if they have learned that in order to feel valued and loved, they have to keep you safe. They have to do what you want, so that you will give me what I want. I mean, a kind of codependency. It's just Human beings are complex.
Yeah.
And the complexity starts from the time we're born.
Right.
You know, there's so many layers, and some of us have been nurtured in such a way that we feel strong enough and have enough self-worth to be able to stand up and say, hey, thus far and no more.
Yeah.
You know, I'm willing, when I'm in from 8 to 5 or from 8 to 4 or 9 to 5, I'm all in. I give you my best, but here is where I'm out.
Yeah.
Some people can't do that.
Yeah.
I remember at a place that I worked, when I closed off and I was walking down the corridor to head out, well, I always had to pass my boss's office. And I'm going out and everybody is still at their desk. I mean, sometime before I used to be that person still at my desk, but at some point in time I said, this work-life balance being a myth, it will become a reality for me. And I established my boundary and they didn't like it. Because I tried to establish my boundary after the fact. So like, you got to work-life balance down real good. As if it was something bad. You know? As if it was something bad because I chose to establish my boundary. But sometimes, once we have learned that these are areas of our lives that we need to protect, even if we did not establish the boundary before, we can lovingly, assertively let the people in our lives know that, okay, I may have allowed you to do X, Y, and Z before, but life is a learning process. It's about growth. And I have learned. And at this point in time of my life, I can no longer allow X, Y, or Z. Right? And even open the door for the other person to learn so that they too can learn to establish healthy boundaries for themselves, because a lot of people don't know. You know, and we have been taught to live in this automatic go along way without being self-aware. And self-awareness brings so much into the life of a person that helps you to show up in life in such a more authentic way, you know, because when we're allowing people to push at our boundaries and we feeling annoyed, but we ain't saying nothing because we want to maintain the relationship, you're not being authentic. You're not being authentic.
Very true.
You know, and people get accustomed using you, and you're stewing in the corner, but you're smiling at the face.
Nonsense.
You know.
Sorry, didn't mean the nonsense to come out like this. This is just Liana nuances going on. Okay, so let's touch on boundaries in relation to in-laws. Because I think this is one of the areas where people struggle a lot. You know, you get married. Well, before you get married, you're accustomed to your parent or your parents, your mother or your father or together. And now you need to join this new person, create your own new family unit. But your parents are so accustomed being so heavily involved in your life. How do you... I mean, this is one of the things that I had personally admired about my husband, because he was very clear with certain things. Once he felt a boundary was being crossed, to say, no, this is the decision between my wife and I. We get the final say in this, and that's something that you would have to respect. But not everybody can do that or knows how to do that, even start having that conversation. And quite a few people are concerned about coming across as being insensitive. You don't want to hurt this relationship, but you want to build this one. Any tips or ideas? I don't know. I know people are complex and nuanced, and we can deep dive in all these various things. But if someone realizes that they don't have established boundaries in a specific area of their life, say in that same family relationship, and they need one, they need to start drawing some, even if it's dotted lines in the sand, until it could be a little more solid. Any ideas, advice, tips? I don't know. What can we give them to help them navigate themselves in that relationship to start doing that?
Okay.
It's tricky, I know.
Cowen, you wanna take a shot at that?
It's always difficult
Yeah.
to re-establish boundaries if you did that in the
Yeah.
first place. Then you know, because if you're married, right? I believe that institution is between you, your wife, or you and your spouse, right? And you gotta try your best to protect it. You gotta protect it from people who just don't like seeing married people. There are people like that, you know, who just don't like seeing married people, so they might tell you certain things, put things in your head. People from work. And the most important thing they'll protect your marriage from is your own family sometimes. Right? Because families are people, like as I said, they're people just as well. And they might see certain things differently from the way that you see it.
Yeah. Right.
But with that in mind, right, you have to let them know that, hey, you have your opinions, you have your views. This is what you would do, or daddy or mommy, this is what you would have done with daddy. But I am now married, I would like to try something different.
Exactly.
You have to let them, and it comes back to boundaries, you have to set your own boundaries. Listen, mommy or daddy or my brother, my sister, whatever, thank you for the opinion. And you have to listen to
Exactly.
right?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you for the opinion.
Yes.
Right? I do appreciate it, because sometimes they might be trying to help.
Yeah.
And you gotta appreciate it, sometimes they might be trying to help indeed.
Yes.
But I believe that this is between my spouse and I. And we're going to discuss it. Whatever decision is made is going to be between us.
Right.
And I do feel that you should respect this decision as much as I would respect the decision that you would have made in your relationship.
Yes.
Because you have to protect your marriage.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that sometimes people don't want to say things because they're afraid that the mother might be mad or the father might be mad. And if mommy is mad, she might want to take care of my son, she might want to babysit or whatever. And people might think, but I think if you come over respectfully, because your parents are looking out for you sometimes. And I'm saying sometimes. Sometimes they are looking out for you. Right? And they might, because in my marriage, I have close-knitted family. And the same for my wife. Right? And sometimes her mom might say something, her father might say something, and she would outright, because she's more outspoken than I am. She would always say, no, mommy, no, it's not going to work like that. It's not going to work like that. And for me now, I know she expects the same for me. If my mom says something, I would have to, no, mommy, it's not going to work like that. Right? And it goes both ways, because she has to protect our marriage from her family. Right? My in-laws. And I know have to protect our marriage from her in-laws, my family. Right? Because she might more feel comfortable telling her mother,
of course,
this is what we're going to work with. And she thinks, and for me, I have to become telling my mom, this is how it's going to work, this is what we're going to do. And it comes back again to setting those boundaries and maintaining them, because you have to maintain them.
People will push against them.
You can't break. And you can't let people come in and make decisions for your marriage, for your relationship. And then when you realize that it's too much, then you're going to try to push them out. It's going to be too late. Right? And I don't know, because everybody's different. Right? Everybody's different. And what you might find necessary for you, I might not find necessary for you.
Right, of course.
Right? And that's why we have to set boundaries in the inception of any relationship, rather than now having to re-establish them after the person was already crossed.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
A lot of what Colin said is really true. Sometimes, unfortunately though, in marriages, you find one spouse has such a close relationship with their mother or their siblings, or their family of origin, that they have a very integral part to play in the marriage. Now that in itself can end the marriage.
Can you say that again? So
that in itself can end a marriage.
Yes.
If the other spouse is this easygoing, passive person, the marriage will still work. but it will not be a happy marriage. That person will go along to get along. That person has completely allowed everybody to trample all over the boundaries, and because they just want to keep the peace, they go along to get along. That is a very sad state of affairs.
Yeah.
So when a couple needs to establish the marital boundaries to protect the marriage, they must come at it as a team, as Cowen says. If there is any division there, divide and conquer could take place.
Right. Wow.
If that couple is not united in the boundaries and the protection that they need to place around their marriage to keep it safe, and if mommy is pushy and mommy like to know everything that's going on, and the daughters, the wife sneaking information to she mommy that she promised the husband that they will not share this information, then the door has been opened for the boundaries to be pushed, and that in itself will create chaos in the marriage.
Right.
Because trust will be broken. Trust is not only broken in infidelity.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, intimacy is intimacy, and that's talking about stuff with your partner that you don't talk with anybody else. You know, your dreams, your goals, your aspirations, your needs, everything. And if information like that is being trickled out,
If you see into me and
and
your
then
mommy,
you share me to everybody else, or to who else you think you need to share me to, then trust is broken. And trust is one of the most difficult things to rebuild in a marriage once it is broken. So it is very important when a couple is establishing boundaries for the marriage, they come at it as a team, and not I decide what boundaries I want and you decide what boundaries you want, and this is how I can do it and this is how you can do it, but I don't like how you do this and you don't do this. And it creates discord in the marriage, and it breaks down the marriage, and you know it's really unhealthy not to set proper marital boundaries. It's very unhealthy.
Okay, guys, thank you so much. As I said sometime before, this goes by so fast.
Yes, it certainly does.
But I trust and hope that you have received some vital, useful information that you may not have had before. So do feel free to share your thoughts with us. What are some important boundaries that you might have in your relationships or in your work life that you can share with others? So until then, take good care and enjoy.
Pro Media Professional Live Streaming Service. Experience the difference when it's live. Pro Media provides you a complete range of live and demand streaming solutions, no matter what your special event may be. Weddings, funerals, concerts, press conferences, conventions, seminars, workshops, meetings, religious events, and more. For more information, call 669-5376 or 609-5264. Experience the difference when it's live.